If you were to ask the average South Australian, have they seen the art of Gary Lee-Gaston? I'm pretty sure they would tell you no.
No. Confidently say no.
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 But if you were to ask those same people, have they seen the Christmas pageant, the Magic Cave, or the Tour Down Under? I think the answer would be different.
Yes.
Yes.
Yeah, seen the Magic Cave and the Christmas pageant only when I was a young fella though.
The fact is, hundreds of thousands of people have seen Gary's artwork. They just didn't know it.
Episode 4, The Pageant, and lots more. A career in commercial art began for Gary in 1953, when at the age of 15 he joined Miller Anderson as a window illustrator and signwriter. He then moved to Displaycraft and Ellis Display in 1961 as a signwriter and illustrator. In those days, all signs and tickets were hand-painted. Gary spent countless hours doing repetitious work that he considered to be quite tedious, but it honed his signwriting and illustrating skills to a level that few could match. He was to use these throughout his career. In 1971, Gary joined the John Martin's Christmas pageant, working with Anton Reeby, an artist who had been at the pageant since the 1930s. After a brief hiatus in the late 70s, Gary was invited back to the pageant in 1980 as the chief artist and designer. Over the next 27 years, Gary was to bring all of his skills as an illustrator, signwriter, artist and sculptor to revolutionise float design and production. Creative float design begins with the ideas. Inspiration comes from a whole range of areas. The artist starts with some initial sketches, and one thing leads to another. The finalised sketches are then presented to the pageant directors for approval. The next step in the process is to build a maquette or scale model, usually carved out of polystyrene foam. This becomes the template and reference point for the actual float construction. Taking some of the more complex designs through to the final product is a definite team effort involving talented carpenters, sometimes engineers and mechanics, costume designers, and of course, the artist. One of Gary's favourite collaborators was English cabinet maker Dennis Hardcastle, a man of outstanding skill and problem-solving abilities. Together, the duo were able to bring to fruition some of Gary's most challenging designs, including the 50th and 60th pageant anniversary floats, the Buffalo replica, the Toy Town train built on top of an old Holden chassis and engine, this huge 10-metre high castle at Westfield's Marion, as well as the Magic Cave, and many other projects. Dennis even built the working parts inside each of these moving elves for a display that Gary did at the Darwin Casino.
Of course, this series focuses exclusively on Gary's artwork. There was many other people, including other artists, who made a significant contribution to the life of the pageant. Their stories can be found here in this wonderful book by Lee-Lennon.
Gary perfected the art of sculpting his float designs out of polystyrene foam. Sometimes they were strengthened with fiberglass or paper mache, or more often oversprayed with urethane before he brought them to life with skillful paintwork. Using these techniques, he was able to produce 8 to 10 floats a year, as well as the Magic Cave. A phenomenal production rate.
As with the first 3 episodes, the horse once again rears its head as an absolute feature in Gary's art. Take Snowflake for example. From this little maquette that he carved, he was able to use it as a reference point and make a much larger rocking horse. A mould was then taken and 6 fiberglass resin snowflakes were cast, 1 for each of the Westfield stores.
From this initial carving, many casts were taken for the iconic carousel in the Magic Cave. This was done in 1973, and up to 16 children could then ride the carousel at once. To my knowledge, it's still in use today. Each of these life-size horses on the Cobb & Co coach took Gary 4 days to carve. 3 of the horses were given a second life on the Tales of the Greek Heroes float. Extra special attention was paid to carving this unicorn and making this float. My sister Johanna is the rider. Then there is this epic piece, the Trojan horse. It took Gary 3 weeks to carve this one. The similarity between the initial float design and the finished product is quite amazing. In his time at the pageant, Gary was responsible for designing and producing over 200 floats. I could always tell his floats. The characters always seemed to have such personality. These sheep are a classic example. Look at the different expression on each of their faces. Here's just a few more examples of Gary's contributions during his time at the pageant. Between 1976 and 1997, Gary would spend 6 weeks of every year designing and decorating the Magic Cave in all 5 John Martin's retail stores. A completely different themed cave was created every 1 to 2 years. Gary's skill and speed at painting large murals was quite remarkable. The largest that he ever designed and painted was the backdrop for the police tattoo at the Adelaide Entertainment Centre. Built by carpenter Barney Cundell, the finished product was larger than the actual police barracks upon which it was modelled. When the now world-famous Tour Down Under came to South Australia in 1999, Gary was the man tasked with creating the huge car-top figurines for the procession that parades the full course ahead of the cyclists. Carved from styrofoam, strengthened with fiberglass, paper mache and internal steel beams to withstand high speeds and wind, they are still a feature of the tour after 20 years. Of course, there are many other high-profile commercial projects that Gary has been involved in over the years, including carving and painting 60 animals for the 12 Days of Christmas display in Rundle Mall, there was also this giant figurine for the Sydney Olympic football tournament. And these widely circulated posters for the WEA and the 50th Golden Pageant anniversary. This Father Christmas image of Gary's was used on all John Martin's Christmas shopping bags in 1984.
Thanks for watching this episode. Even though Gary's commercial art was one of the reasons that he was awarded an Order of Australia, his true passion always lay in the fine arts, particularly his landscapes and his portraits. That's where we'll go in the next episodes. I hope you can join me.